When Bryan Bertino was a boy growing up in a quiet Texas neighborhood, he and his younger sister often found themselves alone in the evenings. Their parents trusted that the suburbs were safe, that the night was quiet, and the locked doors were enough to keep the outside world away. But one evening, when the sky was black and the house was wrapped in silence, that sense of safety was shattered. It began with a sound. Knock, knock, unknock. The noise echoed through the small home, sharp and hollow against the front door. Bryan and his sister froze. They weren't expecting anyone. No car had pulled into the driveway. No neighbor had called ahead. With hesitant steps, Bryan crept toward the door, his sister following close behind. He peered through the thin curtain of the front window. A young woman stood on the porch. She wasn't smiling. Her posture was stiff, her face strangely blank, as though she were there on autopilot. When Bryan's sister finally cracked the door open, the girl leaned forward slightly and asked a question in a flat, chilling tone. "Is Tamara home?" The name meant nothing to them. They didn't know any Tamara. His sister told her she had the wrong house. The girl didn't seem surprised. She just stood there for a moment, eyes unfocused, as if studying them, not really listening, before quietly saying, "Thank you," and walking away into the night. Bryan and his sister locked the door instantly, but the air in the house had changed. They stood together in silence, listening, straining for the sound of footsteps, for the crunch of gravel, or another knock that never came. At the time, they didn't know how close they had come to danger. Days later, Bryan learned from his parents and neighbors that their street had been visited that week by more than one stranger. People had been knocking on doors, always asking the same question, "Is Tamara home?" But it wasn't about finding someone. It was a trick. If someone answered the door, the strangers moved on. If no one did, they took it as a signal. The house was empty, and then they would break in. That night, Bryan and his sister weren't chosen. By sheer chance, by the simple act of answering the knock, they had escaped what could have been far worse. But Bryan could never shake the feeling of what might have happened if they had stayed quiet. If they had pretended no one was home. He imagined the strangers returning, slipping inside, and the house that once felt safe suddenly becoming a cage. Years later, when Bryan sat down to write his first feature film, that memory crept back like a shadow from his childhood. The quiet knock, the blank stare, the strangers who chose homes at random, without motive, without warning. And so he wrote The Strangers, a film born from the fear that lingered in him since that night. A fear rooted in something terrifyingly simple. They weren't after anyone in particular. They weren't following you. They didn't even need a reason. They came because you were home.